Okay, folks, if I could have your attention, please. We'll get started with this first of our public meetings. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Commissioner Tyler McElhaney. Other commissioners are here as well. I don't think we have to do introductions. We'll probably all have something to say here and there, but what we wanted to do tonight was the first of many public meetings, and we are having many. We're going to, we plan on hitting every community in Cottington County: Henry, Florence, South Shore, Wallace, Waverly, and Kransburg within the next 2 weeks. So if you have people that say that you talk to and they really wish they could have been here tonight, highly encourage them to find out when the next public meeting is. And we have a list. We'll go over that when they are. But anyway, we have a presentation designed for you folks tonight. Sheriff Wishart is going to have some information on the jail and the statistics. We have Toby Morris, the financial advisor that we've hired for this project, and he can answer and direct any questions on that. We have Mark Ospis with Architect Inc. He's the engineer firm that we hired to look into this project for us. And like I said, some of the other commissioners and other folks that have been a part of this. So to start off with this, for a better sense of time, somewhere about 1.5 to 2 years ago, this kind of came to a head. And what I mean by that is we had a couple of departments, if you will, that came to the Board of Commissioners stating that they felt there was a problem that needed to be addressed. Okay? So there's a lot of talk out there that you hear about, wow, we just come up with some crazy idea to spend some money and to raise taxes. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that's true. We had Sheriff Wishart that had a meeting to express a lot of concerns with the jail. The building, it is in good shape today, but it's old. It was built for a design and a purpose, and it's basically lived its life. And in part of that meeting, he explained and gave us a tour and showed us what he was talking about with the facility and the problems. And I believe, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but at that time, about 2 years ago, he said he full-heartedly believes this jail will not be sufficient within 10 years. It will be basically dead, if you will. The jail has come to the end of its life. That was one of the first problems. The other problem, Judge Tim and a couple of the other judges talked to us as a Board of Commissioners saying we have a serious space needs with the courts, the courtrooms, the court services, and the people involved in the justice system. And actually, he will tell you that somewhere about 20 years ago, he himself started addressing commissioners with, in the future, we're going to have problems. These people brought their statistics. They educated us as a Board of Commission. This wasn't some faucet idea made up. They had the numbers to show it. So we went to work as a Board of Commissioners and said, okay, we have two problems, and they both dealt with space. We started looking into it, going, what are we going to do to fix this problem? And it came very clear to us as a Board of Commissioners that it was much bigger than what we could handle. It wasn't just the jail. It wasn't just the courtroom. All the departments had requests and needs upon us. So we started looking at hiring somebody to do a space needs assessment basically for the entire county. And in looking, we found Architect Inc. that had done a lot of projects such as remodeling courthouses, additions to courthouses, dealing with the same problem that we were dealing with. We chose Architect Inc. to do a study for us. That was the initial contract that we hired them to do. And we asked them to basically do a space needs assessment of all the departments, meet with every department head, and study our system as a whole, if you will. And they did that. They came back. This has been ongoing for 1.5 years. They come back, and tonight what we're going to present is 1.5 years accumulation of resources and numbers and statistics and projections, but this is what we feel is the solution to a problem. Now in this process, we also got to a point where we put together a peer group committee, lack of a better word, I guess you'd call it. But we went out and we seeked about 30 to 35 individuals in the community. Bankers, financial advisors, real estate agents, media people, farmers, you name it. We wanted people that are right here in the heart of Cottington County to be on this board of a committee to review this information with us and to help give us advice. And what we asked them to do was help us come up with a solution, and if it requires a building, help with some of the building design, but moreoverly, find us a location. Because very on in this project, it started off, the answer was we needed to add on to the jail, which is right off here to the east. We could add on to the, like say, the north side of the jail, the side of the courthouse, and then it grew, and we were going to add on to the west side of the courthouse. And over months of meetings and working on this, it got to the point where the addition was going to be so large, I don't remember, it was about 8-10 months ago, we had a meeting and it was like everybody was pulling their hair out. It was going to be, we're going to add on to basically the whole east half of this court, or this block, and the whole west half of this block. And basically our beautiful old courthouse, which none of us in our infamous wisdom wanted to cover up and hide with a new building, the only part of it that's going to be left was the very front. We were going to hide 2 to 3 sides of this building with the new building. And we felt, in talking to constituents, that the people of Cottington County weren't going to support that either. So the project then turned to, we have to find another location. And we did. We looked at lots. We looked at several different ideas, anywhere from across the street, the empty parking lot, anywhere from the buildings to the east, the buildings to the north. We looked at those. The answer was it wasn't feasible. We got to a point where this project was so big that we needed a lot of ground to build a new building. And the number one issue you have to remember, anytime you build in the downtown part of your town, comes back as parking. We still have a problem today with parking. On Tuesdays, when this courtroom is used, I'm being told till 10 p.m. at night some nights, parking is an issue. So, with that, I think I'll let Mark start off. Mark Ospis from Architect Inc. Like I said, he's the firm that we hired. They did the space needs assessment of all of our departments, and his end result, these drawings and pictures that we have here, they've changed, oh, at least 15 to 20 times, I'd say. I think you can say that.
Thank you, Tyler. As Tyler said, we started with the space needs study. That meant that we needed to talk to everybody in the county system to see what their needs were. And once we did that, we discovered that most of the people that are right here in the courthouse, with the exception of the court system, were fairly well served. But when we got to the jail and the courts, we were in big trouble in terms of space. We looked at the existing site, and as Tyler said, by the time we took our space needs projections and overlaid them on the site, we had basically consumed this entire block. I remember the meeting where Commissioner Myron said, you know, we need to call time out here because we're actually consuming the entire block of county services here, and so we started looking at other facilities and looking at what other places have done. We took tours to 3 or 4 different places. We superimposed a building that was over in Worthington on the site next door, and obviously that took way too much space. we took a look at the Worthington plan superimposed over the Highway Department site, which was under consideration. And you can see that that consumes most of that triangular site. And then you have the issue of what do we do with the Highway Department if that happens. We did a further development on that site as well. And then we took a look at the two sites out on the highway west of town that we're looking at right now. And basically what I'm saying is that the entire commission and the group that we worked with came to the conclusion that we need, if this building was going to happen, if this project was going to happen, it needed to be on a site not in the downtown area because there's no parking, there's no space available. So this diagram shows basically what we had done with the existing jail, the addition to the jail and the remodeling. And as you can see, we were consuming the entire site. So as we took a look at going out to the site that has been selected, you can see that we have basically the new jail design, the new courthouse, the new sheriff's department, state's attorney, and so forth, expansion for future jail, and parking for public and parking for secure areas. And the expansion is planned into the project. We have also shown the way that this might appear as in 3 dimensions, as a 2-story building with precast and glass. The parking here on the front for the public, around the backside for the secure parking for the jail. We've also been working with a security consultant out of Omaha for the design of the jail. And as has been mentioned before, we're talking about 150 beds for the jail, which will allow for expansion. That's a double bunk situation, so that we, in the first phase, you may not double bunk all the beds, but if you had to, you could get 150 beds in there. And so, consequently, we've gone through the space study, we've gone through the study of the existing site, adjacent sites downtown, as Tyler mentioned, going out to look at other sites outside of the downtown area, selecting a site, doing a design, doing an estimate, and I think what we've done is really done due diligence for the county and the city to explore all the avenues available, for what needs to be done. This is basically looking into the future for the next 20 years, 30 years, and I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the design of the building, the selection of the site, or what have you. Yes?
Like mentioned, one of our first thoughts was to renovate this building and put more apartments on the floor below us here. And he might expand on that a little bit, tell us why that wasn't feasible.
Well, we tried to, yes, thank you, George. We tried to look at this building in terms of how it might function for additional courts and so forth, and then maybe moving some of the offices out of this building. And the biggest problem with this building is beautiful building, but the biggest problem is that security is very difficult to achieve in this building. As you can imagine, You see, you see sheriffs at the front door of the courthouse now with wands and security measures, but that doesn't do anything for the witnesses, the jurors. Those kinds of things in modern courthouses are very separated. We have public corridors, we have private corridors, secure corridors. And so when we took a look at this building and tried to add courts to this building, we discovered that we had space to do that, but also this building has a number of columns up on the upper floors like we're at. There's not so many columns, but when we get down to the lower floors, there's support columns very close together. So it becomes very difficult to create open space like courtrooms need. So, that's basically the study that we did to try to determine how to do that. There were other questions? Yes, sir.
Of the $35 million, how much of it represents the jail?
Well, I guess I would have to look at the estimate, but I'm guessing it's about half. We have the jail does not represent half of the square footage, but jail space is more expensive than regular office space, sheriff space, courtroom space, because of the security measures and so forth. It has a lower level of finish, concrete floors and concrete ceilings and painted walls, but all of the security doors, hardware, light fixtures, ductwork, all of that stuff that goes into the secure nature of a jail makes it more expensive. I believe that we're talking somewhere in the $200 a square foot for the courts and the jail, and somewhere around $260 for the, courts and the sheriff, and somewhere around $260 for the actual jail per square foot.
Just to mention that this is being streamed live right now on the radio, and as well as it's being recorded. So if you could please wait for your questions until Commissioner Hatton can get to you with a microphone, so that everybody can hear the question, and then also so that we can hear the answer. Much appreciated. So if you'd state your name and then clearly what your question is after Commissioner Hatton gets to the microphone to you, we appreciate it.
My name is Wayne Cothy. Just what, now in your opening statement as well as this picture, it clearly says courthouse. Just what do you plan on moving out of the courthouse to this new facility if it's built? It's way more than a jail, isn't it?
Oh, yes, sir. It's
Well, what are you planning on moving?
It's basically called the Public Safety Center. It's where the jail will be, the sheriff's office, the state's attorney, highway patrol, emergency management. Toby, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that about it? Court services and clerk of courts. So everything related to courts, everything related to public safety, including the jail, would be in this building.
Is that over half the offices be leaving?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Would over half the space in the courthouse be gone? That's
Well,
now occupied by these things that are moving. Is that half the space?
No, I don't believe so. I think it would be most of the space on this level for the courts.
Well, there's your state's attorney, clerk of courts is downstairs, I think.
Yeah. I don't have the statistics as to what the percentage of space that would be moving out, but everything related to the courts makes sense to move into this building. There was a lot of discussion about who should be in the new building, and You know, the state's attorney's office really belongs there, even though they should not be, you know, near the judicial system. They need to be there as representatives of the people. So, you know, that was the decision that was made.
Could you please express the upgrades for security as far as detention center goes?
Toby, you want to handle that one?
I could actually start a slideshow if you'd
There
like,
you go.
and answer that question, go right into it. Just before we're done though, does anybody have any other quick questions for Mark? And we can have a longer question, we can for sure have a longer question and answer period after.
My name's Bill Tholfsen. Mr. Auspis, thank you for this presentation. I just want to clarify a couple of things. You speculated at the cost of this being 50% of the jail cells. You're not sure about that? I mean, are you
Well,
guessing,
the
or-
square footage of the building, as
What
to
cost is attributed to it is what I'm trying to
the cost of the project related to jail cells?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have a cost estimate that I could, you know, go through and get you that answer,
Okay.
but I don't have that on the top of my
The
head.
second question is, has the county retained, I always like to follow the money to understand these situations.
Yep.
Has the county retained you to do this presentation and to do the work in terms of interviewing the people and so on and so forth to see what the needs are?
Yes,
Okay, so you're on retainer, separate from what you would earn in the event that this project would be approved, and then Architects Inc. would then
correct. Yes,
also pay you additional funds.
that's correct. We have
So-
not been hired to do the project itself. If the bond issue passed and the project became a reality, that would be the commission's decision to who they would hire.
But because you're in on the front end, I just want the public to understand, because you're in on the front end, the chances of you being in on the back end are pretty significant, and then if we follow the money, you have a tremendous upside to be paid. So I just want everybody to understand that your impartiality
Well,
here.
I'll guarantee you one thing, sir. What we've been paid thus far to do this study does not cover anywhere close to our costs. If we are hired to do the project, it will be on our merits, and it will not be because
But
we've
that's-
already been
But
hired
that
to do
speaks to what
something.
I'm asking and saying. You're doing this investing for a minimum amount because you have tremendous upside at the end. And I just want the public to understand that you're speaking from that platform. So thank you very much.
It's my business. That's what I do.
Mr. Thovson, if you'd like, I can tell you that I just talked to the auditor today. To date, Architect Inc., the Cottington County has paid them exactly $20,000, well, just a little bit over $20,000. That was the fee established for the space needs assessment and everything else. They haven't been paid anything else. They work, you know, Mr. Morris can probably explain the normal project of this is it only, if it passes the bond and this project goes ahead is when they get the big chunk of their pay for this project.
Can I understand that? Confirming what the question I asked. So, then the other question would be, Mr. McElwain, how much money has the county spent, how much taxpayer money has the county? Bill Tholfsen again. The other question, Mr. McElwain, would be how much public funds has the county spent on this matter without even having a vote of the people in terms of land, architects, and on and on and on, excluding any time that the commissioners have put into it, and travel expenses, looking at other places. I mean, what is the cost? And obviously, the commissioners aren't free either. That's a soft cost, but it's distracting from, you know, other things we're doing. So do we have any idea what that actual cost is?
Essentially, I don't have an exact dollar figure, but it's very, very minimal. It can't be, you know, within probably a couple of thousand at the most. The majority of this work, the commission as a board feels that that was their job. The problem that was presented to us, it's under statute, it's our job to provide space needs for these departments, and that's what we were doing. We just feel we were doing our job. The travel, I know there was a lot of controversial talk about the trip last week to Denver. That was all paid through, the sheriff wanted that course. It was recommended for us, and it was paid through by his membership to the Sheriff's Association, and he can answer that. But as far as taxpayer dollars for specifically that event, it was absolutely minimal.
But you mentioned $2,000. We've got $20,000 invested here. You mentioned $2,000. We have $20,000 invested here. And how many tens of thousands of dollars do we invest in the land out there?
We actually purchased the land without any dollar amount whatsoever. The land was owned by the city of Watertown, and in talking with the mayor and the council, we agreed to do a land swap. So we took their property and we traded them some of the property that the county already owned.
But good consideration, whether it be cash or other property, it's still an expenditure of the county's resources, Mr. McElhaney. That's just what it is. It doesn't have to be cash.
Right. I think if Toby gives his presentation here, some of that will be answered.
Okay. Go ahead.
In the visual display, it showed that you superimposed a picture of the Worthington Courthouse in the space to the west of this courthouse, and showed that it wouldn't fit. Could you show a plan of the future Justice Center superimposed on that same space and show how it fits? And if the Justice Center did remain downtown in a space such as that, could something like the current jail, which would not be of use, possibly be put down to parking space to help with the parking problem?
I'm not seeing who I'm speaking to, but, okay, hi. That's a good question, because the Worthington footprint was a one-story building, and the building that we're proposing is 2 stories. And the jail part of the Worthington is 2 stories, but the rest of it was 1. So the Worthington plan does take up more square footage than the footprint of our building, and we can show the current suggested plan of this safety center on that site. I can tell you with all confidence that it will not fit. I mean, we will not be able to get any parking to speak of on that site if we put this footprint on that site. But if it's desired to do that, we could sure create our site plan to the same scale as that aerial and show you exactly what it would be. The other point is, of course, that the county does not own all that land to the north of the city building, just a sliver of land that's in there, so that would be another issue to deal with. So the other thing that we noticed, of course, when we were thinking about that site was that we're butting up against residential areas directly to the west. So we would be putting a jail and safety center adjacent to a residential area. We would also still need to transport prisoners from the current jail to that safety center if we so chose to do so. So, I mean, that site was dismissed after 2 or 3 looks at it. So, but if we needed to do more, we sure could.
Okay.
Maybe before you start your presentation,
Yes, ma'am.
ask you one question that maybe you'll be covering. Thank you. Nancy York. I'm just looking at some of the figures and trying to digest some of the numbers that have regards to the jail. And it seems like we're being kind of force-fed the idea, and I guess I've certainly agreed with it, that jail numbers should be going down in years to come because of all of our education of different things, all of our programs such as Sobriety 7, going back to work programs for prisoners, a lot of different programs, halfway houses and so on, that are being established to put some of the cost of their crimes on their backs rather than on the backs of the taxpayers. Now, these figures really go fly in the face of all those ideas that we've been taught through media or whatever. Can you address that just a little bit, why you think the numbers will be going up so drastically in the next several years?
Well, and I'm not reporting that they're going to shoot through the roof overnight. The numbers that you see that are on your pamphlet there and that will go over here are what's gone on over time, over the last 27 years, and I'll get to that in the slide. So these numbers weren't just drummed up overnight. We have had the programs, they call them alternative sentencing programs, like the 24/7 program, you mentioned that. We've had that in place since 2007. I believe we've seen the largest amount of benefit that we're going to see from that program. Now, some of our numbers over the last few years have had somewhat stabilized and then shot up again a little bit. So what we're going off of projections, that's all I can say is I got to look at the past to try and project what's possibly going to happen in the future. And we'll go through some of this through a slideshow. First off, I'd like to remind folks that, and you have to excuse me, I move around when I'm speaking, so if I keep darting from side to side and it looks like a tennis match, just go ahead and stop me in between. But I like to remind folks that your sheriff's office in your community, by state statute, okay,
I'm sorry, Toby. I guess I would just like to ask the question about building onto the current jail, going up another floor. I know that that's one question that a lot of people have talked about, and I guess I would like to hear your discussion on that.
I could answer that.
I can answer that too, Mark.
Okay, well,
I called just to dilute the rumor. I called Pope Todd Architect, David Todd, because they're the architecture firm that built that building over there, myself. I knew the previous sheriff went through this too, and I knew the answer to it, but I called him myself. That structure is not built to be added onto. Is that one off, Brenda? Okay, we're going to try speaker volume here. See if that'll eliminate our feedback problems that we got going on. That structure, the way it was built, the way the external walls are, and it's got internal column supports. Those supports can't hold an addition onto the top of that structure. It'll collapse within itself. So there is no way to make an upward addition onto that structure. Can't happen. So.
that was going to be my answer too.
Okay, very good. Good answer. The sheriff's office, through statutory regulation, we can charge fees for some of the services that we provide. We provide services that are within the detention center and also within the sheriff's office that we can charge for, okay? So while I'm not a backer of any government entity earning money, your sheriff's office can bring back some funds. So this is just the last 6 years on record. Now, on the left-hand side, you got jail fees brought in. Now, these are work release. These are contract prisoner fees that have been brought into the jail, through the jail, over the last 6 years. These are sheriff's fees. We can charge fees for civil process, for warrant service, for doing sheriff's foreclosures and sales of sort. So we can collect these funds. When the existing structure was built in 1973, it was opened in 74, cost $750,000. There's a $1 million addition that was put on in 1998. That $1 million addition in 1998 fit the needs of that day today, that day in 1998 when it was built. It wasn't built for expansion in the future. So with those two figures, we've covered that 1.7 million, almost 1.8, just in the last 6 years. So we paid for that facility itself just in the last 6 years. I'm not counting back any farther than that. Those dollar figures make about 18% of the sheriff's office budget in a year. Square footage needs. Again, when you build a jail, you look at a jail facility, you can't just pull figures out of the air. There are Supreme Court rulings on these kinds of things, such as you have to have 70 square foot per cell per inmate. And actually that can be double bunked. So two-person cell, 70 square feet minimum. 35 square foot of day room space per inmate. Now that's singular, so that's per inmate. We currently, basically, when you add up these figures, we're below square footage for what the amount of beds that we have. And anytime we have more than 64 inmates on our main floor, we are well below square footage needs. We had 66 people in jail this morning when I came to work. So, going back to the numbers, 1985 is when the sheriff's office took over the detention center. We had an average daily population of 20.85. You'll see in 1992, you'll see the increase. 2012 was the peak of our increase. And then you can see from 1985 to 2012, it's 126 or 196% increase over 27 years. From 1992 to 2012, 120% increase. So you'll notice in the most recent years, we didn't climb as high in the last 20 years as we did in the last 27. All that's figured into those projected numbers. So if we continue on the same course, we'd be looking at a 90 prisoner per day population in 2022 and 135 by 2032. Did you have a question, sir? Oh, okay. Through the Criminal Justice Initiative, Senate Bill 70, the state indicates a 10% inmate increase due to the criminal justice initiatives, basically sending nonviolent offenders to your local jails as opposed to sending them to the state penitentiary where they have to increase jail bed space, and then the state doesn't have to build a new penitentiary system. Just to give you a number of how many people we have going through the jail in a year's time, we did over 2,600 bookings last year. It's an average of 7 persons per day that get booked into the detention center. There's been discussion of, well, if the courts need space and the courts can force the county to provide that space through legal means, why not just build the court space? As soon as that conversation was brought up, anytime I go to a conference, I go to a sheriff's conference, anything like that, I always try to tour the local detention center. See what they're doing, see what's working, what doesn't work. After touring other facilities and other locations, I can tell you that having the courts apart from the jail is a major mistake for a county or a municipality to make. And I say that because inmates need transport to and from court. Now there's also a rumor out there that, well, you can do it via TV or via video television, all the court hearings, right? Only the initial appearance. And the good judges here in the courtroom, he can attest to that. We do initial appearances for people who have their bond set, things like that. We can do that in the detention center for their first court hearing. Every subsequent hearing after that, whether it takes 3, whether it takes 4 or 5 hearings, that inmate has to be in the presence of the judge in the courtroom. It's required. So, what if we were to build the courts and leave the detention center out of this? Well, I'd have to have staff to transport those inmates to and from court. And these are just some figures I came up with. If I had to hire potentially 4 to 5 people and have a separate fleet of vehicles just to move people back and forth. And I don't even want to consider the safety implications of that. Because your risks of inmate escape always take place as soon as you get them outside of the facility. As soon as you get that inmate outside of the facility, that's when an escape's going to take place. They either try to do it during transport, or they try to do it while they're at hospital visits, or clinic visits, something like that. And that's where my people get put at risk, and the general public. So, we've toured several different facilities, taken a look at them. I've personally worked here for the county for 18 years. I've never worked in another facility, so it's very important for me to see other facilities and see how they're running. But it's also hard to project for you folks to see what other facilities even look like until you see what ours looks like. Here's the booking area, which we were able to expand on here, four years ago now when the police department moved out. So this was a lot smaller, but we were able to expand. We got holding cells there, and this is a booking area. This is what a modern booking area looks like. You notice in this picture we've got wooden doors, because that's all we had to work with. In this facility, it's much more open. Sight lines are better. So you'll notice here we got an L shape, so we got a corner back here that you can't see. Sight lines are better, and we got, notice the secure doors that we got going on in this facility. Here's the control room. Control room is the hub. That's where the video feeds are coming in, that's where the phone lines are coming in, and right here, this is where our front desk is for the window to greet the public that come and do jail business. We've got push buttons on the wall that run certain doors, not all doors, some doors. And we'll get into the mechanics there a little bit. Push button system for an intercom system throughout the jail. This is an example of a modern control room in a modern facility. You've got a computer system right here that does everything that this big panel on the wall here does, and this panel over here does, as well as there's radios that are here, so it handles all that, not to mention the computer system that we're already running. Controls all the doors. They can control all the doors throughout the whole facility in that room. We can't do that here. My correctional officers still carry the big keys, like you see in the movies, big keys, because we don't have remote control access to all the doors within the facility. That puts your people at risk for being taken hostage and having their keys taken. What you notice here is that they've got an indoor rec area also. But you notice also the sight lines. You can see the sight lines going into each cell right in this control area. You got an indoor rec facility. Why in the world do you need that? With natural light. This is our rec yard. We have to deal with issues of weather. Now you say, why should we worry about these folks, right? They're your inmates. Why should we worry about things like weather? Why should we worry about whether or not they can get recreation? Studies show, the most recent numbers I've seen is could be up to 30% of your jail population end up with some kind of a mental illness, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed. And inmate issues arise when people don't get two things. First one's natural sunlight. The second thing is adequate exercise. So basically imprisoning people in a dark environment where they can't get good exercise, we're not doing them any good. And then we're turning them back out into the public, and what are we dealing with in the public? So while I'm not an advocate for being lavish for inmates, I'm famous for saying where we don't run a Hilton, okay, we run a jail. There are basic necessities that need to be met, and that's one of them. But not only that, we have to deal with the weather and people trying to get contraband into our jail by either going in, over, and around and under this fence that's exposed to the outside. So, this is our Cottington County cell block. Again, our building was built in 1973. Each one of these is a separate cell. Our shower's at the end of the block there. Common room, this is the day room area. That's your telephone that you can call your loved one on. Again, this is not the Hilton. This is another example of one of our sentenced areas. This is a maximum security area. This is a sentence cell block, so you've been through court, you know what your sentence is. You might even have work release, and this is where you'll stay. About 12 beds in this area. This is an example of a modern facility. You notice the two-story construction. You notice in this picture, down at this end, what do you see? It's open windows, right? That's where your control room is. Sight, you can see. We've got the oldest facility type built. It's called a linear. You got a hallway going down and you got cell blocks off. Creates sight issues. You can't see. You can't see into the cell blocks. You got to walk down the hallway and do a visual inspection, and you still can't see it. You still can't see everything in that cell block. This right here, you've got complete line of sight through this whole facility. So that's a safety that is built into modern facilities. Number one, you got sight lines. Number two, you got computer-controlled control rooms. This is some examples of some of the equipment that we're dealing with. Here, this was just within 2 weeks ago. This is the lock mechanism outside of our maximum security cell system. Again, it's 40-year-old equipment. The solenoid went out that runs the actuator motor that makes the thing up here turn, which pulls a lever here, which then makes the slider go shut. Yeah, but this is outside of our maximum security cell block. I like to joke too, but not when my people are put at risk. Okay, so this is our worst that our society has to offer is behind this door. And this lock quits working on us. This is the control panel for that lock. Okay, the lights, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And if you notice this note right here, that wasn't staged. That was on there when I took this picture. It says, doesn't work, use key, exclamation point. Okay, so this lock was down for the weekend. Jailers had to use their key to get in here only. It's the only access they had to it. I'll flip through. This is an example of a slider door within this maximum security area. So you got two doors. So if somebody tries to escape, they at least have to try and get through one of those doors, right? This is a slider for the internal door of the maximum security area. We have trouble with this slider mechanism up top of it. The last time the slider mechanism went out, we had to have a motor special built for that piece of equipment. And it took weeks because they don't make parts for this equipment anymore. So that's what we're dealing with. So anytime something goes down, we're not talking days, we're talking weeks, sometimes longer. This is an example of what we call our timeout area. It's our confinement. And just like Commissioner McElhaney had said, we just spent 4 days at called Planning of New Institutions, put on by the National Institute of Corrections, by the way, which is the federal agency that oversees prisons and jails. And what they had instructed us on there is if you're building a new facility, or if you're looking at a new facility, make sure, just due to classification restraints, classification issues of inmates that are coming in to our care and custody, that your 33% of your facility is made up of single cell space. So you can seclude people that need to be secluded, protect those that need to be protected. We have one place. This is it. We have one cell in our current facility to handle that load. Copy of your brochure that you have in front of you. And I'm announcing here, I'm going on a little bit of a limb, but those of you here that came to attend tonight, after we're done here, after all the questions have been asked, if you wish to get a tour of the jail, it's the first time this has ever been done, okay, so I'm going out on a limb a little bit. If you want to get a tour of the jail, at least the portion of the oldest portion of the jail, we're going to do that after this meeting. So I'll make another announcement when we're all done here and give you some directions, but I just want that in the back of your mind. If you wish to take a look at what we got down there with your own eyes rather than just my pictures, we can do that. Any questions?
Toby, one thing if you could mention before you start, could you highlight when the jail was built in 1974 by design, how many rooms, how many beds, and what are we currently at today?
Very good question. When the current facility was built, it was built for 38 beds. The addition was put on in 1998. That added 14 more. Make sure you keep my math straight. 52, so that should be at 52. So in 1998, we're at 52. Well, Sheriff, what have you done since then? Yeah, we've spent a little bit of money because we had to make some room. We had to make some room for our current population. We have to make do. When you don't have it, what do you do in South Dakota? You make do with what you have. So over the last 4 years, we've done in 3 phases. One of them included the police department moving out then. We've added 12 more beds to the basement. Another project of 12 more beds in a basement back corner. And we've added beds wherever else we could to come up with an actual bed space today of 96 beds. So then you say, Sheriff, well, you're telling me that you had 66 people in jail, but you have 96 beds. Well, you're not full. A very wise sheriff, best way that I could, so I can't take credit for this quote, but in a jail, you can only use 20%, you can only use 80%, of your bed space. It's always 20% that sits empty. Well, why is that? Because we never have the perfect demographic population. We never have the perfect amount of juvenile females to juvenile males, to adult females to adult males, sentenced males to unsentenced males, sentenced females to unsentenced females. We never have that perfect combination. So roughly 20% of your bed space can't be used, literally can't be used. So that leaves you with another dilemma. Literally need more space. Yes, sir. If I have one juvenile, I gave one other gentleman a tour here earlier today. Today we're holding one juvenile in jail. That takes up eight of my beds. So 8 of my beds are gone because our juvenile wing holds 8. So I should say 7 empty beds, but 8 are taken up. Yeah, other jails that we toured, when we took tours, completely separate juvenile wing, completely separate staff. Now we can hold juveniles. That's a benefit to the county, because right now you're paying upwards of over $200 a day to house a juvenile outside our auditor, shaking her head, nodding her head, because she knows she writes out the checks. Over $200 a day to hold a juvenile. So it's very cost beneficial for the county for us to maintain what we call a co-located juvenile status, which our jail maintains now. So we maintain state standards to be able to house juveniles. And every step of this process with our jail plan here has included the juvenile component. And actually, very early on when I sat down and talked to Mark, it was, we got to design a detention center around the juvenile section. Unfortunately, that's what we have to do, because by state standards, those juveniles have to be kept sight and sound separate from any adult. There can be absolutely no adult contact whatsoever, and we have to maintain that. Good question. Yes, sir?
Do you handle on a regular basis inmates from other counties?
I can repeat that. Very good question. Do we handle on a regular basis inmates from other counties? Cottington County, we contract with 5 other counties. I consider 3 of them full-time. The 3 full-time are Clark, Hamlin, and Dual. If somebody gets arrested in any of those counties, they come straight here. That's not free. We charge that. That goes along with those fees that I showed you early on that we do bring back. $65 a day. We also contract with Kingsbury County and Grant County. Grant County is really part-time. Yeah, they do have a jail, but if their jail gets full, they bring them here. Kingsbury, then everybody says, well, raise your rates. If we need to pay for something like this, raise your rates. The reason why Kingsbury, I can almost consider Kingsbury a little bit more than part-time now with us, because in recent, Beadle County raised their rates. So now it's more cost-effective for Kingsbury County to bring their inmates to us. Now, the next question I always get is, why do we need to build this jail? Because we're holding other counties' inmates. Okay, so now we need to look at building a new jail because of the rising of the other counties' inmates. Over the last number of years, the percentage of inmates that we're holding for other counties is between 9 and 10%. So this morning when I come to work, and like I told you, there's 66 people in jail. I do the count for the other counties. 7 of those inmates are for other counties. Only 7. Now what does that equate for the county? That brings in roughly between $130,000 to $150,000 a year. And in 2015, we're going to raise those rates up to match the state rates, which is going to be $70 a day. So when you do that math, us holding those other counties' inmates literally pays for 2 months' worth of salary for my staff, for the correction staff. So us holding those inmates, it's like getting 2 months' worth of free labor for taking care of those inmates. But not only that, look at it this way, look at it more regionally. What will those other counties do? What if they don't have a jail? What if they didn't put people in jail that needed to be in jail? In my 18 years, crime knows no boundaries. So if somebody's committing a crime in Dual County, there's no reason why they won't come into Cottington County and do the same thing or something to one of my residents here. So I take great pride, and I know my staff does, they're in the shaking up. Take great pride in being able to house these people for these other counties as well. We know we're doing a regional good by hanging on to these prisoners. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, my name is Bob Mack. I have to sympathize with your opinion there on housing other prisoners, but my big concern is these prisoners aren't covering cost. I mean, this new facility, half the interest on it's probably going to be $700,000 a year. So we're not going to get it covered, just the interest even there, let alone your staff. But my other concern is, I guess I wouldn't have a problem with it if this was financed with sales tax dollars, but this entire project's going to be financed by the taxpayers of Cottington County. And I don't have a problem with a regional center. I think it probably makes sense, both courts and jail. But the thing is, I don't see any of these other counties' taxpayers coming in to help pay the bill. And I mean, maybe that's something that should be discussed, but why should the entire burden of this facility fall on the backs of Cottington County's taxpayers? If it was sales tax revenue, the people from those counties all come in here, that wouldn't be a problem. But this entire burden is getting put on the backs of Cottington County taxpayers, and I guess both in the courts and in the jail. And I guess this is my big concern, because I think elected officials have a responsibility to the taxpayers that vote for them. And one other quick question there, just a simple one. How many escapes have we had from this current facility? Thank you.
Well, I'll answer the last one first. I'm very proud to say that we've had 0. Not from this facility. And I'd like to say it's because, number one, the staff and the procedures that we have within and dealing with the constraints that we do have with the current facility. So I've got to put it on my staff for just procedurally taking care of business. I don't want that to happen. I don't want to see something like that. I don't want to see my staff hurt. To answer your first question, I'm not a legislator. In seeing how Minnesota, for instance, deals with having to build a new jail, after going through this process, one answer I see is that the legislature needs to make it that counties that do have a jail need to be able to hold X amount of dollars in reserves, because it'd be a lot easier for me to stand in front of all of you today and say that we've got half of this project in reserves, a third of it even a fourth of it would help. But unfortunately, the way the legislature cracks down on what counties can hold in reserve, we don't have it. So Minnesota's found a way around it, because they know that the general public doesn't, trying to sell a jail to the general public doesn't go over. So literally off a vote of their commission, county commission, they can invoke a tax, this, to make a jail project go through. I don't like to see that. I like to see things like this go to the vote of the people and let them decide.
The one thing that I wanted to point out is that the cells that you've created in your lower level really don't meet the standards of natural light and so forth that you were listing before. So they really can't, in my mind, they can't really be counted as long-term solutions to correction needs in this county. So.
No, you're absolutely correct. Everything that I've done with facility ever since I've been in office has literally been a Band-Aid. That's how I've described it. It's just been a way of making sure that safety and security of the community can be kept up while we search for a solution, and that's what brings us here.
Sarah Peterson. Toby, could you expand on the opposite, though, as if our jail got too full, what would be the cost to our county to ship somebody else? Because there's not just the per day cost, but the other cost. Do you have an idea what that would be per inmate?
And I'm very thankful for our community, our citizens committee, because this very question was brought up during a citizens committee meeting. I was floored. I want to say I was floored because I had never thought of that as a solution. And at the same time, I had never thought of that as a solution. It terrified me at the answer. Because, number one, there isn't a facility close by that would be able to handle our inmate population. So, number one, what do we do? Number two, how much would it cost us to ship. So now you're not only talking about the staffing and the busing of prisoners to another location, and I don't know regionally how I would ever convince another sheriff to take on our problems. Why would they, unless we were paying them healthily to do it? So I can't give you a dollar figure. I know that we would spend millions of dollars way fast.
Sheriff Wisher, could we go back to your slides there? Go back to number 2. I just had a couple of questions, please. Bill Folsom talking. There we go. Next, yeah. So you made the comment that the collections have actually paid for the existing detention center. So if I look at this, the left-hand column are costs, the middle column are collections, and the right column is the total budget. Is that correct?
No, the left column is dollars brought in to the detention center. Now, once again, through work release, fees, through inmate contract or contract inmates fees.
Okay.
Anything that's brought in through the detention center. We also do fingerprinting for $10 a shot. So all those dollar figures are brought into your left column. So this is all income. The right column, the middle column is income, sheriff's office. Far right column is the summation of both.
And so what's the total budget then each year of the sheriff's department? So this is the total amount of money you're bringing in. What's the total
Well, the
budget?
total annual budget changes from year to year. It goes up about 1 to 2% every year. I want to say this last year, I believe the jail was about 1.4, give or take. Sheriff's office was a little over $1 million.
So 2.4, and you're typically collecting 400,000, so it's still costing the citizens $2 million a year. It's not actually.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You bet, 100%.
Right,
Any law enforcement entity is going to cost the taxpayer $1.
Correct. But
There's no way around
You
it.
said that it's been paid for, but, you know.
Well, I mentioned the dollar figure off the last 6 years. We paid for the cost of the existing structure as the construction costs that were put into it from 1974 on.
The next slide, you have a total square feet of 8,113. And if I divide that by 70, I come up with 116 beds. What am I missing? If you have 8,113 square
You're not
feet,
adding in 35 square feet per inmate, per day room space. You got to add both of those in per inmate.
So if you divide it by 70, it's 116. If you divide it by 35, it's 232. So why is my math wrong?
Because you need to add 70 plus 35.
Okay.
Take that times 96.
All right, gotcha. The next slide, yeah, and that's reflected here on this historical projected inmate growth, and Ms. York spoke to this. But if you go from 85 to 2012, you're talking 196%, and that just looks like a huge number in 27 years. Do you have any idea what the per year growth is? Do you have any idea? You can't divide 196 divided by 27. That comes about 7.25. It's actually 4.10%. And if you go from 92 to 2012, it's 4.02% growth when you compound it. Okay? You made the comment that on this thing we're going to grow to well, it looks like about 140 some inmate cells, or inmates. If I use the recent minutes said there was 48 there. It was probably a couple months ago. But if I do a present value on 48 and I go 4%, we grow to 105 inmates, not 140. And if you look at the initiatives here, Senate Bill 70.
Daily population numbers from the last 27 years. 48 is not an average daily population until you get back to, that'd be about the mid-1990s.
In the paper, it said about 3 months ago that you had about 48 average, and I just took 48. So if you take 48 at 4%.
If you read that in a paper, that's a misquote. That is absolutely wrong. And I'd like to see the article, because that's wrong.
Okay, so if you go 48 at 4%, it grows to 105. If you go 60, you know, these numbers, I'm just saying it's misrepresenting what it really is. 120, it just looks like a huge number, but it's only been a 4% growth. And if you,
I don't,
and if you look
Mr.
at,
Thosen, I don't know how you can say I'm representing when I'm giving you my average daily populations over the last 27 years. And like I said, 48 has not been an average daily population since probably, I'm guessing, but I can give you the exact number, but it'd be about the mid-90s.
196% in 27 years is 4.10% growth a year, sir.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that.
Thank you. And just like the 1992 to 2012, 120% looks huge, but it's 4.03% growth. Ms. York made the point, and she's right. We have these initiatives, we have Senate Bill 70. All these things speak to doing everything possible not to incarcerate people. And
On the state level, but it brings more of a burden on the locals.
Well, I read Senate Bill
The
7.
state indicates that we're going to have, that we should see some inmate population downfall on the backside, but I, as your elected official standing in front of you, I can't bet on that because I have a community to protect, and I'm not going to let waning jail space make my decision on whether or not I can bet on Senate Bill 7.
I think it's also important to note that these numbers represent double bunks. And there are certain types of inmates that cannot be in a double bunked room, cell. So, you know, these are maximum numbers that have been projected with double bunking in every cell that we've shown.